So, we're known for our mead, and we're getting known for our beer. But what if we combine the two? Hi, I'm Brian.
I'm Derricka, and today we're making a Braggot. This Braggot was requested by Derek, Sarah, and like 90 other people in our City Steading
The number 2
Facebook
requested video
group.
on our Facebook group, yeah.
So thank you, Derek, for the suggestions, and keep more coming. So what is a Braggot?
Glad you asked. A Braggot is literally a beer that has honey in it, okay? It's fermented with honey. At least 50% of the sugars that ferment have to come from honey for it to be called a Braggot. That's like a legal definition. If you just put some honey into a beer, it's not really a Braggot at that point, and if you have just a little bit of malt in there and mostly honey, then it's really just a mead. So if this falls somewhere squarely between. I might be making up my own definition at this point, I don't know, but I know I made something that was kind of like a Braggot over a year ago that was really more just a stout with a little bit of honey in it. It was good, don't get me wrong. But this, we're actually going to try something a little bit different. We are going after what's called the raw ale process as well, which is still used today by a lot of people in a lot of countries. I didn't know this. I started looking it up because I wanted to make a really simple method for people to make beer. Because a couple people have said even our simple beer method was a little bit much. Okay, so let's start something for the true novice. You don't have to buy any special equipment as you're sitting here watching me use an immersion heater. You don't actually have to have an immersion heater for this. I'm doing it just to make life easy for me so I can show you on camera. So, what do you need to be able to do this? You need a pot.
Oh.
We're going to start here. You need a pot with water. You need a device to calculate the temperature of that water, also known as a thermometer, or as I like to say, a thermometer. You need a boiling bag, which is just a nylon mesh bag, no big deal. A large bowl helps to contain it while you're pouring things. You will need 1.5 pounds of 2-row or pale ale malt. You will need a 1/2 pound of crystal malt. Sounds like a lot. I know, but there's a reason for it. And you will need 0.3 ounces of Cascade hop pellets. And Safe Ale SO4 yeast. You don't have to use Safe Ale SO4 yeast. You could totally use bread yeast in this, or any other ale yeast, or any yeast really, because the way beer works, it's all good.
And honey.
And you need honey, yeah, because it's not really a Braggot, it'd just be beer. So what I'm going to get started doing though is the mash in process. So what I have done is we heated this pot of water to 160, well, we heated it to like 178 degrees, and it dropped down to like 155. We have the immersion heater going in again to get it up to 160. 160 is my chosen mash temperature. Now, there's a lot of temperatures that you can mash in, anything from like 145 to 165 degrees. For this, because I know that much of the fermentable sugars are actually going to come from honey, I'm not as concerned about getting every last ounce of sugars out of the malt, but I do want the flavors from the malt. So I'm mashing at a slightly higher temperature. Usually about 155 is where you go. I'm doing 160. Gonna get more body, gonna get more mouthfeel, gonna get more structure to this beer. Yes, I'm calling it a beer because that's what I really think it is. But I wanted all that extra flavors and things to come from the malt and get the alcohol kick from the honey. Make sense? That's why I'm using 1/2 pound of crystal malt. Most recipes will call for very small amounts, like just a couple of ounces of crystal malt. I'm actually using 8 ounces of crystal malt in what's going to end up being about a 1.5 gallon batch. I did that on purpose. I want that color. I want it to be dark. I also want that smooth, the creamy caramel sweetness and things that come through, and the aromas and things like that to work with the honey instead of against the honey. So there's a method to the madness.
So all our utensils, including the bag that we're using, have been sanitized and turbos, the red bucket of sanitization. But let's get to work. First of all, we're going to hydrate our yeast. So we have Brian's self-stirring cup filled with a little bit of water, and we're going to add our yeast to that.
Scissors would have been good. Handy dandy Swiss Army knife. Wonder if I could find a link to these on Amazon. So what I'm going to use for this is about half a pack. I'm eyeballing it. We don't need to get all crazy about it. Yeah, I know in the past you've seen me not even use half a pack when I'm doing a 1 gallon. I've revised that statement. Now, if I'm doing 3 gallon, anything less than 3 gallons, I use half a pack. 3 gallons or more, I use a full pack. No big deal. So our water just came to temperature, if you heard that beeping. And Derek is just going to hydrate that. She's mixing it up a little bit. We're going to set it to the side while we do the rest of the stuff, because that's really going to sit out for quite some time, okay? Because the mashing process takes about an hour, and the time has already started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting our grains, which is these. Now, these are malted grains that have been cracked, okay? That's important, that they're malted and cracked. Otherwise, you won't be able to get anything out. Maybe a little explanation of what the mashing process actually is. There are starches and sugars in these grains that, well, they're not easily soluble in water. They don't just come out. So there is actually enzymes, amylase?
I think.
Alpha amylase and beta amylase that are in the grains already that at certain temperatures can be coaxed to come out and start to break down those sugars into something fermentable. And that's the whole idea behind beer. That's how it came about. So I have all that stuff in here. We're gonna stick it into the water. The trick is you don't want it to hit your immersion heater. It could melt. So I'm gonna very carefully put that in and hope that I don't overflow the thing. Oh, look at that. It's almost like we planned it or something. There's just the right amount going in there. Now, something else that needs to happen. Can I have that metal spoon? You want to make sure you are completely hydrating all of your grains in there. So what I'm going to do now, she's going to get me a spoon. And I'm going to open up the bag and get in there with my spoon and mix it around a little bit. And the thermometer just came loose. We don't really need that anymore. Okay, and I just want to mix that up good. Again, being very careful to not hit the immersion heater with it. And done. Close up that bag. And I only want the part that's in there to be touching things. Just like that. Make sure. I do have a couple of clothespins here if I need them, but I think we're good. So now, at this point, that is all you need to do to get this started, okay? What I will also be doing is taking the hops, putting it into a little bit of water, maybe like that much in a pot, and I'm gonna boil the hops for about 5 to 10 minutes. There's a reason for that. One, it sterilizes them, and two, it helps with, there's some acids that need to come out of this to help make the beer taste right, and to add bitterness. It's also a preservative. The preservative effects aren't as critical today as they used to be, a couple hundred years ago, but it's still a good thing to do. So by boiling this, instead of just dry hopping, we get some of that bitterness into this, because honey and the sweets from grains, it's gonna be way over sweet, so we want some bitterness. If I didn't boil this, we wouldn't get the sweetness, or the bitterness out of it. Make sense? I probably sound like I'm rambling at this point, but it's okay. So we're gonna let this sit. If you do not have an immersion heater, that's what I meant to say, you can just put this in a pot, wrap it in a blanket, put a lid on it. You want to keep the temperature as constant as you can for about an hour to an hour and a half. I might let this go a little bit longer than an hour, just because the bag doesn't let the water circulate really well. So that way, maybe we can get a little bit more of the starches and sugars out of there. Okay, we're gonna let this go, like I said, for about an hour. I am gonna make my hops tea while we're off camera. It's not hard. Pour this into boiling water, let it sit for 10 minutes. No big deal. And we'll see you when that part is done. Okay, so it's been about an hour and a half, roughly. Right now on the stove, I have about that much water in a very small pot with our 0.3 ounces of hops boiling away. Well, I'll give that 10-15 minutes or so. That's our bittering agent, and it adds that hoppy flavor type of thing. But what we did with the wort, it sat for 1 hour on the well, it wasn't right here. We moved it over there. It sat for 1 hour with the immersion heater in there, kept it at 160 degrees. After 1 hour, the immersion heater kicked off. The temperature started to drop a little bit. Maybe only another 10 or 15 minutes it sat. I put it in the bathtub with this much water in the tub, and in 10 minutes it cooled down to, well, now it's at 105 degrees, which is just about spot on. Perfect.
The reason why we put it in the bathtub was to cool it down. If
Yeah.
you have all the gear and you have a wort
Wort
chiller,
chiller.
then you can use that
You can use that
method.
too. I don't have one, haven't made one, so we use the bathtub. Works just as well for me. For smaller batches, if I was making like 10 gallons at a time, yeah, I probably would invest in one. Anyway, so what we want to do now is get this thermometer out of here. And I actually want to, yeah, that's 105. I really want to get it into the fermenter, okay? Because that way I can mix it all up in there. We want to be careful though, because metal objects, plastic fermenter, you know what? Mixing it in here. So let's do that. Let's add our honey now. Okay, so we have our honey and it's been sitting in turbos with warmer water. That's now cooled because we did a lot of filming today. And I'm going to add 1 pound of honey. Now this is Sweet Squeeze Florida Honey Raw and Unfiltered. I actually got it from Amazon. The link's in the description below. Adding 1 pound of this. Actually, I said 1.5, right? Because we're doing 1.5. Yeah. Okay. There we go. 1 pound, 8 ounces of honey added. And we're going to mix the bejesus out of it. But first, I'd kind of like to take it off my scale just to not stress the scale. So we'll get that guy out of
Do you
there.
need this or no?
We're going to need that for the pot that is on the stove.
Ah.
Now, I'm mixing to incorporate. That's all. Just want to get that all mixed together. All right, so it looks like I have all of the honey incorporated. Yeah, there's none left on that spoon. And we brought over the hop tea. Now, it's been going for, I'd say 15 minutes or so. You can boil it all day long if you want to. It changes the bitterness level. It does make it a little bit more bitter. But right now, I am done with, well, nope, I gotta mix that some more. So let's just leave that there. I'm gonna take our hop tea and a strainer. Just a little nylon plastic one. It's not going to get everything, but the rest will fall out of solution and it's okay. I'm just going to pour this carefully right in. Ugh, it's lovely. It's like green goop. Yeah. But it does add to that aroma and flavor and smell. I mean, I can already smell the difference in it. And I'm just trying to get as much of the liquid out as possible. Perfect. And we're done with that. Give this a mix. And then comes the scariest part of the entire day. Putting this in there. Now, if you don't use an immersion heater, you can just mash right in this bucket. These food grade buckets can actually hold quite a bit of temperature, and it's okay. You just want to wrap it in blankets really good so that, you know, it won't lose as much heat. Are you ready for this?
No.
Me either. Okay. Only one way to do it. And that's to do it. Can you just shoot that stuff to the side a little bit there? I may have to stand slightly.
Bucket.
That was better than expected. We only spilled a little bit.
I was in the splash zone.
Yeah, I'm sorry, baby. So let me just wipe this up a little bit here. Oh, not bad, actually. You did get some on you, though, I think.
I did. Yep. It's okay.
All right. So what we have now is in our fermenter. I am going to be doing it in a bucket this time. We just got these from the beer and winemaker's pantry. Thanks, Mary. And before we do this, before I take a reading, before I add the yeast, I want to get a temperature reading to make sure that that hot water didn't mess up our temperature. You don't want to be over about 112 because that'll kill your yeast. And, you know, dead yeast don't really make beer or Braggot or mead. So, oh, we're at like 100 degrees. We're good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pitch the yeast, give this one last stir, and just pour it in. I'm going to stir this with a metal spoon, but I'm going to be cautious. I don't want to scrape the sides because then, you know, bad things happen. What kind of bad things? Well, if you scratch it and bacteria get into that crack or that crevice, it's really hard to get them out, as in almost impossible. So you could be infecting your next brew if you scratch this. Maybe. It's not a definite, but it could happen. So we like to be cautious. He says as he dumps 2 gallons of... Although it's not even hot anymore. It's just very sugary and sweet and sticky, probably. As evidenced, yeah.
This is sanitized liquid that's coming out, so don't be squeamish.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get our reading so that we know about where we're at with this wort. I'm aiming for somewhere in the 1060-ish range. We'll see how good I am, how good my efficiency was. Generally speaking, a pound of malted barley per gallon, or per pound. Generally speaking, a pound of malted barley per pound per gallon of wort should net about 25 points of gravity with like a 70% efficiency. Someday I'll do a whole video on efficiencies and how to test for such things and all that. I don't get too concerned with it. And honey does about honey does about 35 points per pound per gallon. And let's see here. Well, I missed the mark. I didn't get exactly what I wanted. I got 1062 instead. So I guess my efficiency was just a wee bit better. Or maybe it's just slightly less than 1.5 gallons. There's a lot of little things that can change that, but 1062 is pretty darn close to what I estimated this being. So we're going to put that as our starting gravity. I'm going to take this back out of here, set it to the side. Ooh, sample smells nice. Very honey. I'm going to pour that back in. I wouldn't expect so much of a honey smell on this right away. It's kind of interesting. Do want to give it one last stir. Now this is my aerating system, okay? What?
Remember not to scrape.
Right. Remember not to scrape. What I'm trying to do is just get a little bit of movement in here. I know it's not much, but this bucket, I am afraid to shake this, like I do with the carboys. I don't really want to do that. So I'm just going to try to roughly stir it without scraping the sides. We don't really use a lot of buckets. I did for Viking's Blood and did like a 2.5 gallon batch, but I'm starting to like the 2 gallon batch size. And also, like if I did a 2 gallon batch and I put fruit in it, like for a wine or something, when I extract that and rack it, I have like 1 gallon left. So it actually kind of works out well. But I figured for beer, a little more than 1 gallon is probably appropriate, and I'm fairly certain we're going to like this one. So I thought, we'll just do it in a 2 gallon batch. All right, that's as much as I dare do right now, but I can give it a little shake every now and then if I wanted to. So I'm going to take that lid, put the lid on it, and seal it good. We get a lot of people asking all the time, hey, it looks like my beer, wine, mead is fermenting, but my airlock's not doing anything. My first question now is, have you checked your lid? Because 9 times out of 10, that is the culprit. We're going to take an airlock that needs some stuff in it. How long will this take? Hard to say. There is no set number of days or time or anything like that with beers, wines, and meads. What we like to do though is I usually let it go for about 7 days. I mean 5 to 7 days, and it should be just fine. Then we'll take a reading, figure out where it's at, and that's when we'll do the next aspect of this brew. So I just stick the airlock in there, and that's just a one-way valve. It lets all the gases out, keeps bugs and literally bugs and bacteria and things like that from getting in. So like I say, this will take about a week. I'll have this sitting probably in my closet. It's a little big for under my desk. So it's been about 12 days, not about, actually exactly 12 days, and our Braggot / beer / raw ale should be done. I have not tested it. I have not tasted it. I did give it a smell a couple times. And you might notice that this They're the same level. Okay? We didn't have positive pressure. Plastic bucket. The seals don't always work real good. I couldn't bother to put tape and all that kind of stuff. I knew it was working. It's fine. I did check it after, what was it, like 2 days or so? Opened it up. It was all foamy inside. Never needed a blow-off tube. So, you know, there's kind of a positive to that. But anyway, so we haven't really depended on the airlock for much of anything other than just to sit there and not let things get back in. I don't like the fact that there was no good seal, because that means, you know, some things could sneak in, but I don't think it's going to happen all that easily. It was a very, very, very small leak somewhere. I did get a seal a couple times, so, you know, it's fine. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to remove that lid.
Brian's going to remove the lid.
We're going to try to remove the lid. I don't know how it didn't get a good seal. That sucker was on there. So as I look at this, I can still see that there's a couple bubbles breaking at the surface, but I think that's mostly just off-gassing. It smells like a beer. There's definitely a hoppy smell in there. And the grains, I can even smell the honey. So yeah, I think we've done well. What I want to do now is get a reading on this. I just checked, and this bucket isn't quite tall enough to just drop the hydrometer in there. It'll just hit the bottom and won't give me a good reading. So we're going to put it on the recipe box of elevation. And we have another sanitized 2-gallon bucket here. One tip. A lot of people are doing this now. They're buying a larger fermenter and then they don't know what to do to rack. When you buy a fermenter, buy 2 of the same size. Makes your life so much easier. That way you can rack, you can do what you need to do. Buckets are great too, just for temporary storage. That's why I like the plastic pitcher. I use it the same idea. So what we're going to do is we'll rack first, then I'll take a reading, because, you know, why not? As always, we have our auto siphon with the little cap on the end. We're going to stick that into the liquid, not super far, and we'll get that started. Now what we're going to have is trube on the bottom of this. You might be tempted to call it lees. It's technically the same thing, but it's also technically completely different, because lees is wine as trube is to beer. I don't make this stuff up. That's just the way it is. It does have a lovely color so far. Very amber. Kind of a caramely color. Now, in my head, while this has been fermenting, the whole time I've been going, do I let this age longer because there's honey in there? Do I, you know... So I want to see what the reading is before I make that assessment. It is possible that we'll just be putting this back under airlock and letting it sit for a month before we bottle. I don't think so. I think I actually want to bottle this, and we'll let it age in the bottles at room temperature and carbonate a bit. Okay, so we've racked, and here at the bottom is our trube. Wow, that's actually pretty significant. You can see here's the Croissant line. That's normal. That's from the foam. It just leaves some proteins and deposits on the side. And then all the way in the bottom is all the...
Don't attempt it.
I'm not. Is all the trube, which is a lot of things. It's yeast, living and dead, because the yeast is probably still alive. It just ran out of sugars to eat. And proteins and other particulates that we really don't want in our beer anyway. Also, any fine pieces of hops and the barley and stuff like that, it's all going to sit in there. Now, some people will take that and make bread with it. They'll also reuse it for a next batch of beer. You can do all kinds of things. We don't, mostly because it just gets very complicated, and trying to do these things on video that way makes it even more complicated. So anyway, what we have here is our Braggot. Now I'm going to get a reading on this. And just like we always do, I'm just going to use a turkey baster. I'm going to put it into a graduated cylinder, drop in a hydrometer, and we get a number. Pretty sure the label says what it started at.
We started at 1.062.
That's a reasonably high gravity for a beer or an ale. Most of the time they're like around 1040 to 1050. Okay, so once I put in the hydrometer, looks like 1008. That's pretty reasonable. That's a good starting point. I don't know off the top of my head what that actually is, but it would have dropped 54 points, so I'm guessing it's somewhere around 6 to 7%, but it'll probably show up right here somewhere. I can have that back. Now, I'm not going to taste this yet. I'm going to wait till it carbonates. It really smells like a combination of a beer must and a mead, which I know, duh, that's what it is. But it really does smell like that. Now, this is only the second. Don't freak out on me. Don't worry about it. This is only the second Braggot I've ever made, and the first one we actually found the recipe. Might be doing that one again because it came out really good. Anyway, so we have our finished must. I'm going to take some sugar. Now, this is called priming sugar, but you know what it is? It's regular white table sugar. There's also like priming tablets and carbonation tabs and all. They're just sugar too. The easy way that I do for most beers and sparkling wines even is 1 ounce or 28 grams per gallon or 3.785 liters of liquid. Okay, I don't know what the breakdown to make it nice and easy per liter is. You can probably figure that out. But anyway, so I take that sugar and I just drop it right in, unceremoniously, and splash Derek in the face probably. Then I take a clean, sterilized spoon. I'm using a rubber one so I don't scratch the plastic, and I'm just going to mix that through. Okay. Now what this does is it gives the beer a little bit of sugar to work with again. It gives the yeasts that are left in here, so that when we put it in a bottle, it will produce a little bit of CO2 over the next few days and carbonate the beer. Now you want to do that at room temperature. And there is not a lot of worry about this going too long. People get a little nervous about this. Beer is cool in that it kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have unfermentable sugars in beer. Okay, the barley and all that creates unfermentable sugars. So it's going to remain a little bit sweet even though fermentation is complete. Then we just put some more sugar in there, but just enough to create carbonation, not enough to make a bottle bomb. And the beauty of that is when it reaches the point where there's no more sugar left, the yeast just stop fermenting again. They drop to the bottom. That's why you'll always see a little bit of sediment in the bottom of a homemade craft beer. And that's a good thing. That means they naturally carbonated. Now you can put this in a keg and all that kind of stuff if you really want to. I don't do any of that. I just naturally carb them. There's also been some question on, do you degas beer? I don't. You can if you want to. There's no reason to. This hasn't been fermenting long enough, nor does it have any stressors for those yeast to cause off flavors or things like that from the gas. I am letting a little bit of gas out by mixing this up, but it's not that big of a deal. Okay, I don't feel any more grains in the bottom. I think we're done. Now today I'm going to put them in, these are 16-ounce swing top bottles. You can put them in 12-ounce bottles. You can put them in 16-ounce bottles. We even put them in wine bottles with swing tops. Why do I use swing tops? A lot of people ask this all the time. Can you cap your beer? Can you cap your... Yes, of course you can. But now that's a disposable thing. You have to throw that away when you're done with it. Swing top, I can use this dozens of times. You can get new seals as they wear out and things like that. But other than that, I can use this bottle 200, 300, 400 times. And some of these bottles that we have been used many, many times over. They've held many different kinds of beer. I like the 12-ounce size because it fills one of our glasses perfectly. 16-ounce fills it a little bit, almost too much, but not quite. And the 750 ml just means that, you know, I get 2 glasses.
The only word of caution that I would give on the swing top bottles is that if you're sanitizing with an acid-based sanitizer, you don't want these to stay in there for an extended period of time.
There's a coating on the metal. Somebody did this recently in our group, and they left it in overnight or something, and it just completely took the coating right off the metal. So you want to be careful with that.
It can also erode the rubber as well.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So you just want to sanitize them long enough to be clean.
Basically,
and
a
then
30-second
put them out
rinse
to
is
dry.
pretty much what you want.
Yep.
You don't want to leave them in. You don't want to leave anything that's plastic or silicone in there either, because it starts to eat the outside of it away, and that deposits on other things, and it just becomes this whole nasty cycle of erosion. Anyway,
Now
we're
to
going to
bottle
bottle it. So what I'm going to do is take our auto siphon, and I'm going to put a bottling one on the end. This is the little... I have the springy one now, people have noticed. It has a spring tip, and what happens is as that hits the bottom of the bottle, it flows. Now it stops, so that way I can put it all the way to the top of the bottle and not make a mess. Although I tend to make a mess anyway. The trick to this is you want to put it on just enough that it stays on, because we've had that happen, and not so far that you can't get it back off. Because some people have 2 siphons, one just for bottling, one for... I'm cheap. I have 1. Actually, we have 2, but the other one's for a bigger bottle, and I'm not going there. So here, you can drop that all the way to the bottom. Now, some people might ask, why did we rack this first? Here's exactly why. We had trub in the bottom of that. I don't want to have to worry about that. So now it's all in here. I can mix it all up, and we're going to go right to the bottom, to the point that anything that's left, I'm pouring it in.
Because we wanted to put our amount of sugar in our beer liquid rather than individually in the bottle, which is another option.
I don't like that option. I don't like that option, and here's why. If you are measuring out an amount of sugar to put in each bottle, you cannot be 100% sure that you are putting the exact same amount in each bottle. A little bit too much can be a lot of carbonation extra, and the amount that would actually go into each bottle is so minute. Some people say, oh, a teaspoon of sugar. Wow, that's how you get bottle bombs. That's scary. A teaspoon of sugar is a lot of sugar to be putting in one of these bottles to carbonate. So that's why I like to put it in the whole solution. It's dispersed through the entire thing. It's a controlled amount, and that way every bottle is the same. Now, the downside is if I do create bottle bombs, they're probably all going to explode. However, I've never had one because I'm careful about it. We don't put too much in. I don't need this to be like exploding fizzy everywhere. I just want some bubbles in my beer. All right.
Ready?
Yes, I am ready. Notice I have the spare right here, ready to go. You're flowing. Slowly. What I'm going to do, I don't know how well you can see it from there. You can see it. The level's about here. I'm going to wait till it gets to like here. But first, while it's still going, I'm going to check. Oh, look at that, see? It stopped. That's what you want to see. Derek is going to be our play-by-play level shower of things.
I've been referred to as Vanna, so
she's our Vanna.
I'm trying to Vanna today. And so the volume of that brought our final level down to there, which is perfectly fine.
And then, while that's filling, the other hand. These are really hard to do. Okay, I'm not doing that. Usually I can do it with one hand. These bottles are brand new.
Yeah, they're brand new.
So oh, wow. Gonna be fun getting it open. And that's what I always do. I just keep the second bottle ready to go. That way, as soon as I get to the top, I can just drop it right back in. Don't waste even one drop of beer, because every drop is sacred.
So we're going to go ahead and finish these up, and we'll be back when we're done.
Okay, so bottling is done, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 full 16-ounce bottles, and 1 half full. So you know what? If I can get it open. Yeah. They're brand new. Did we mention that? And they're really tight.
I've already bent this fingernail back.
Yeah. If you don't like your fingernails, you know. Anyway. Give this a little smell. Give it a taste.
Now we know this isn't the optimum time to taste this, but we wanted to go ahead and include this in this video, particularly since we had the half-filled bottle, which we know will have to be consumed soon. So they're not carbonated yet.
Put this in the fridge.
And they're not cold. But we can still get an idea of what it should taste like once it is carbonated and cold.
Now, it does have a little bit of cloudiness to it. And I think some of that's because we disturbed some of the trub when we were doing things. That will settle out and it'll be fine. But it's just a little bit cloudy. It's not like mud, but it's a little cloudy.
The color is pretty though. It is a amber color.
On the smell, it smells green. Okay, and this is kind of what I was afraid of because there is mead in this. You know, essentially it's a mead / beer. It smells a little bit green. I'm afraid this might take some more age than a normal beer, which, you know, that's common sense, right? Little taste though. Definitely get a little bit of hops, almost a little bit of a bitter flavor to it, and I think that's the greenness of the mead. But the barley note is there, but it doesn't taste cereally, so it's actually kind of a positive.
I do get, in the scent, a bit of what, if this was a true mead, we might consider to be a footnote.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not.
I know we're not using that, but it still
comes through.
Appropriate to explain what that scent is, and it's just the gases in here. So maybe because this was a mead/beer hybrid,
it's also room temperature and not carbonated. So
I'm guessing may have been beneficial. But I was watching when he was stirring,
Wasn't
and
much.
there really wasn't much coming out. So
That's why I didn't worry about it
Yeah.
so much. But the flavor's not. It tastes a little green. I mean, a little green. It's not that bad. Like, as beers go, it tastes like a beer with a little bit of mead poured into it, which is exactly what it's supposed to be.
yeah,
It's not bad.
It's not bad. It's different. If you're not used to drinking mead or used to drinking beer, but you're
Yeah.
used to drinking the other, it's
This is
definitely
also very
different.
simple. Now, I know we're not making this overglowing thing. This is room temperature, non-carbonated,
Yeah.
and very young.
Yeah.
What I'm probably going to do is age these in the bottle for like a month, maybe 2 months. Normally, I'd age beer for like 3 to 5 days and then start putting it in the fridge and consuming it. These, because of the honey content, I think I want to let these go for at least a month, maybe 2. They'll be fully carbonated at that point. Then we'll refrigerate them, and then we'll do a taste test again and see how they taste. And maybe keep a few of these for like a year and see how they go, if we can make them last that long. I want you to also remember this is a very simple braggot. There's not a lot of extra malt flavors in here. Already tasting this, I know things that I would do for next time that would make this a lot more complex and deep and richer. Use the honey notes instead of letting the honey notes be like kind of the forefront. There's a couple things that I would already do differently. But for now, it's actually pretty decent, and if you've never had a braggot, or you don't know how to make beer, or you just want to get into making your own stuff, this was a really simple recipe. I did it on purpose with the raw ale, the no boil method. Super easy. That's all I got for now. Talk to you in a couple months when we do a taste testing. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye bye.